Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's Mbed OS Tech Forum. As always, I'm joined by Andy Powers. Good evening, Andy.
Hi, good evening. How are you doing, Dom?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And quite exciting agenda today. And what are we going to talk about today?
So we've got our colleagues Joe Alderson, Rob Moran, and Arek Zadusky from the DSG team. They're going to talk to us and tell us more about Keil Studio, which is ARM's new online IDE for embedded development. It's a continuation of what the team are doing on Mbed Studio, so we're bringing them in to talk about that.
Excellent. So let's bring them straight in. So we got first Joe, Arek, and Rob. Let's start with you, Joe. Welcome to the stream. Could you maybe describe your what you do at ARM and what you're going to talk about today?
Sure, thanks, Don. So I'm Joe Alderson. I'm Director of Embedded Tools and User Experience at ARM, and I've been at ARM for quite a long time now, about 8 years. And in that time, I've mostly worked on development tools. So I've worked on the Mbed tools over the years and the Mbed website, and now I work on the Keil tools. So all embedded focused development tools within ARM. You might have met me before at trade shows. I'm quite often doing demos and that kind of thing in person. So if you've ever been to Embedded World or one of ARM's own summits like Dev Summit, you might have met me there.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Joe, and welcome. Then next we have Rob. Rob, good to have you with us.
Thanks, Don, and hello to everyone. My name is Rob Moran. I'm the Director of Engineering for Online Tools here at ARM. I've got a background in developing websites and services and tooling, and I've got a specific sort of engineering interest in the fusion of web technologies and embedded engineering. I've been at ARM for around 7 years, and around 5 of those years I've been leading the Online Tools group, delivering sort of websites and experiences, including Mbed.com and the Keil websites, as well as IDEs, including the online compiler, Mbed Studio and Keil Studio.
Excellent. Well, thanks for joining. And finally, last but not least, we have Arek. Good afternoon, Arek.
Thank you, Don. Welcome, everyone. My name is Arek Zadusky. I'm a tech lead for Mbed Studio and Keil Studio. I've been working for ARM for around 6 years, and I'll be showing you today a demo of Keil Studio Cloud, and we'll let you know more about it.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Andy.
Yeah, so Joe, I think we were intending that we start with you giving like a high-level overview of what Keil Studio is and where it's come from.
Sure. So Keil Studio Cloud is basically part of ARM's next generation of embedded tooling. So what we're doing is taking some of the ideas that have worked well with Mbed over the years, and taking some of the ideas from the Keil tools ecosystem and bringing them together and kind of evolving them in a way that I think makes sense with the way that development tools are going now. So particularly embracing cloud technologies and workflows that are maybe a little bit more, I guess, modern compared to some of the more traditional ways of doing embedded development. So Keil Studio is the first product in this kind of new suite of tooling, and Keil Studio Cloud is an open beta that ARM has just announced. So what we've basically done is evolve some of the code base of Mbed Studio into Keil Studio, and what we've done is broaden out the support. So it's more than just Mbed OS that we support now. The focus is on the CMSys ecosystem as well, which is a little bit more granular, a little bit more software component driven than Mbed. But we support both of those frameworks in the IDE. And Keil Studio Cloud is also complemented by some work that we're doing on the web side of things. So we're starting to put some new board pages together with software examples that you can find and bring into the IDE for evaluation. So again, taking some of the concepts that have worked well with Mbed and thinking about how those could be a bit more broadly applicable. So as I said, what we've got at the moment is an open beta. It's something that we're really keen to get feedback on, and it's something that you'll see developing quite rapidly. So one of the advantages of having a browser tool is that we can roll out updates to it really frequently. So we're really keen to hear feedback, and you'll see it evolve quite quickly over the next few months.
Excellent. So I think for folks who want to try it out, is it what's the URL that they can go to, Joe?
So if you go to the keil.arm.com website, that's basically the landing page and the place where you can access the IDE from. So the IDE is free to use. So if you've got an Mbed account already, or if you are new to this and you create an ARM developer account, you can access the IDE just like you could with the Mbed online compiler. So it's just a one-click thing, and you're in there. So if you go to keil.com, I can share my screen and maybe talk through some of the concepts there, or you can go and visit it yourselves. It's up to you. But you'll see some of the vision that ARM has for where we're taking our cloud tools in future.
That sounds good. Maybe like having if you have like if you have your screen up, that would be quite useful. And maybe while you do that, I'll ask you a question. Like you touched upon this briefly. So I'm sure we have like some Mbed Studio users on the stream. What should they expect, and what's the sort of? Could you maybe explain what the difference is between those two products?
Sure. So actually, this is a really good place to talk this through. So if you've used Mbed Studio before, everything should feel quite familiar to you. So the library management, the program management, the way that you interact with development boards is all very similar to Mbed Studio on the desktop. And hopefully, if you've used the online compiler, it's not too dissimilar as well. So if you visit the website here, you can kind of get a tour of the features and the functionality inside Keil Studio browser. So you can see, for instance, we're using WebUSB, which is one of the technologies Rob alluded to in his introduction to do our device interaction. You can click through and look at some of the examples, and we're actually starting quite small on the CMSIS side of things. So we're starting with a new type of project format and a new suite of examples. But from an Mbed perspective, you can work with any of your existing Mbed OS 5.12 Plus and Mbed OS 6 programs in this basically the same way that you would do in Mbed Studio. So you have a workspace that's full of your programs. You can set one of them as active and develop it. You can keep it under source control. And you can do a bit of device interaction as well. Now, this is something that's still under development, and you'll find that we add some more functionality in that area pretty soon. But at a minimum, what you can do is connect your board and do the same kind of drag and drop programming workflow that you have in the online compiler. So we'll, at the very least, build the code for your target board. But you'll find that things like the IntelliSense are much better. So, this is a big step up compared to the way that we did it in the online compiler. Again, much more similar to Mbed Studio. So if you're exploring code or if you're authoring, you'll find that the hinting and code completion is much better. And then again, similar to Mbed Studio, similar to VS Code, the source control is much more I think vanilla is the word for it in Keil Studio. So you'll find that all of the sort of familiar Git actions are there, ready to be used in the IDE, which is slightly more involved, slightly more, I think, professional than the online compiler, which had very simple source control. And as I was saying, if you want to find out a bit more about the context of this and where the IDE is going in general, and some of the other tooling or ideas that we're working towards, you can go and check out the videos towards the bottom of this page. But otherwise, you can access it from the button on the top right, which is quite familiar from an Mbed point of view, and you can go and explore some of the board pages. But again, from an Mbed perspective, you've got effectively any development board that you use today in terms of a build. So at that point, I'm going to stop sharing and hand back over to Don and Andy for any other questions.
I had a question, Joe. If people are using this, how do they give feedback? Because I mean, I think you're making it clear that that's important to you. So, what are the best forums, or what best routes are there for people giving feedback to you?
Sure. So you can give it in tools. So there's a little feedback icon in the IDE, which I'm sure you'll notice when Eric does his run through. But you can also go to the forum. So because it's a Keil product, we're using the ARM forum for this. So you can either go to the ARM community, but of course, you know, we're always watching the Mbed forum as well.
I think there's a separate Mbed Studio forum, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. So any questions under that, we're happy to answer as well, of course.
Thanks a lot, Joe. Maybe I've got one for you, Rob. Joe, you mentioned briefly that you're leveraging WebUSB to actually like run the whole IDE in your browser and interact with devices straight from there. Rob, could you maybe, how does that work? Like, is it, what is WebUSB maybe for folks who wouldn't,
okay.
wouldn't know that?
Okay, yeah, so WebUSB is a relatively new technology, which has been implemented in a couple of the mainstream browsers, so specifically in Chrome and Microsoft Edge. And what this allows you to do is get access to a local USB device and interact with it from a browser. So this means that in certain circumstances, we can detect your hardware and set up the environment accordingly. But we can also potentially deploy built applications to your board and also potentially debug it as well from the browser. What this means is that you can get almost a level of professional tooling, which is what we're aiming towards in future, through a browser context without having to install anything and still work with your local hardware.
That's pretty awesome technology, and I tried Keil Studio like this week, and I was really impressed with like how seamless that is. And you know, like a couple of years ago, we still had to install a lot of stuff to just get like to download a program onto a board and have it run, and like being able to use your browser to do these things with zero installation is quite magical. To put it mildly. And
amazing the speed at which technology progresses, Don.
Yeah, I'm still amazed by that.
Work's gone on behind the scenes to add support into sort of hardware, firmware, and things like this. But yeah, ultimately, it's been made possible by the WebUSB technology.
Yeah, it's probably worth saying as well that there's quite a long way to go here. So we're kind of at the start of building this technology out, and right now I think the device support is kind of limited to the most recent versions of CMSIS DAP, for example, but it's something we'd love to do to broaden the support out. So that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at over the next few months, really.
Excellent. I think it's a good point to actually hand over to Eric, who's got a demo lined up for us. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see that working in practice.
Of course. Let me share my screen. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen. So I'm at keil.arm.com. So that's the page that was shared before. And to access the studio, all you need to do is just click the button in the top right corner. So after pressing it, we can see the login screen of Keil Studio Cloud. And like Joe and Rob mentioned, it supports login with both Mbed and ARM account. It means that if you already have the Mbed account, you can log in to it very easily. So I will just provide my login credentials. It's my demo account that I just created today. And on login, I'm asked, as usual, for my password. So it's the same login screen that a lot of you are probably familiar with it. It's the same one that you can see on osmbed.com. So after providing my password, it's actually taking me directly into Studio. What happens now is the creation of the container. The first login may take a little bit longer, simply because your container will be created for you, but it shouldn't take longer than 2 minutes. What is nice about Keil Studio Cloud is everything, all of the tools, everything is provided for you. So there is zero installation on your system. After Keil Studio Cloud loads, user is greeted with this screen. And there is a very quick and simple getting started page where you can learn a little bit more about like support, the documentation, or create the new projects. So what I will do now is create a new project in Studio. As you can see on the left, we have all of the program management. Also, what is worth mentioning is a lot of you may be familiar with the UI of it. It's because we based our solution on FIA, which is using Monaco editor. It's the same editor that is being used in Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code. So I think that quite a lot of you may be familiar with it already. So I will create a new project. One thing that was mentioned before by Joe and Rob is in Keil Studio, we support both Simsys projects and Mbed. Simsys is the same as you can see in Microvision. If you are familiar with it, it's based on the Simsys packs. But today, we will focus more on the Mbed side. So we ship Keil Studio Cloud with multiple different examples. So you can see a lot of examples for Mbed OS 6 and Mbed OS 5. We do not support Mbed OS 2 at the moment, but we are considering adding it in the near future. So all of your feedback, if you would like to see it, it's definitely welcomed. So I'll create a new example. I'll pick one of the simplest one, which is just the Blinky for Mbed OS 6. I will select it to make it as an active and add the project. What happens now is the project is being created and all of the libraries are pulled. What is nice is you can see how fast it was. The reason why is this example is very small, so it only has one library, Mbed OS. And in Keil Studio Cloud, we are caching all of the official releases of Mbed OS. It means that if your example is using the official Mbed OS, the creation will be extremely quick. If you are using like non-official Mbed OS, your own fork, for example, then it may take a little bit longer, but it will also work. What happens also after the import is we show the README, so you can see automatically, so you can read more about the example. So let's take a look at the targets. So at the moment, we support all of the targets that are listed on osmbed.com, but there is a different level of support on those boards. It's something that Joe mentioned before, that we are working closely to support not only build, but also deploy and debug on all of them potentially in the future. So I will select one of them, let's say the K64F board. And let's take a look at the code. A lot of you are probably familiar with it. It's the basic Blinky example. So it has the simple while loop, which is like with thread sleep for like 500 milliseconds. One of the big difference that you will notice in Studio compared to online compiler, if you are familiar with it, is the fact that we support quite advanced IntelliSense. What it means is It will help you while coding, so it will show you the problems. So for example, if I remove the semicolon, Studio warns me about it, and it even allows me to very quickly fix some of the common issues. Also, while I'm typing, you can see that it actually runs in the background, and it helps me like coding, providing me all of the functions, and I can like easily select it. If I provide the incorrect argument, Studio will warn me about it, and also will try to give me the hints of how I can actually fix some of the issues. Of course, there are much more features that you can see here. You can navigate directly into the files and see them. So all of this is directly enabled. Another feature that is very important for us is the source control management. So in Keil Studio Cloud, we support both Mercurial and Git. So I will show you how it works. This is osmbed.com. Quite a lot of you are probably familiar with it. And that's my page where I can connect different accounts. So what we support is user can connect his or her GitHub account to osmbed.com, and then Studio will have access to it. So if I connect my GitHub account, it asks me, of course, for the permission. After I do this, you can see that my account is actually now linked. When it happens, all I need to do is refresh the Studio. That's something that we actually want to improve very soon. At the moment, the refresh is required, and user can link from osmbed.com. But in the future, we want to do all of the linking of the GitHub account directly from Studio. So we will not need to leave the context of Studio. So now, when I have the example, I can actually publish it back into GitHub. So I will do this. I will select the publish option, and as you can see, I can either provide the URL. So in case I created the the repository before, I can just point Studio at it, and that's when my example will be published. Or the more advanced flow is to allow Studio to create the GitHub repository for you. And that's what I will do. So I will create the new repository called Mbed OS example Blinky demo arec. I will provide description, which is optional. I can select if it's the private or public repository, and it shows me where it's going to be published. So after selecting it, what you will see is it will create the repository on my account. So if I will go to GitHub, you'll be able to see the repository created. As you can see, 11 seconds ago, so it has just been created, the repository. And as you can imagine, by default, it's empty. So now in Studio, we have the Git integration and Mercurial integration. Quite a lot of you are probably familiar with it because very similar one is also in Visual Studio Code. So I can select all of the files to stage them, either one by one or just select all of them. And I can provide the commit message and commit all of my changes. After that, we have a nice history, so we can see actually the history of this repository that appears here. By going back, I can, of course, now publish my changes, so push those changes to my remote repository. So I can either choose push or push to, that will allow me to select so I can see exactly where it's going to be pushed. So after selecting it, what you will see is the changes are being pushed. And now I can actually refresh the page. And what you will see now, all of my code, all of the files that I committed are into the repository. I will not show it now, but exactly the same way it works also for Mercurial. so you can import or commit your examples directly from it. Apart from that, we also have some of the features that Joe and Rob mentioned already about. One of them is build and deploy. So that's what I will show now. To do this, I will select a little bit more complicated example that I created a little bit before. So I'll pick the serial one, which is just a very simple Blinky, but that also have printing the message on the serial monitor. So it's the private repository, but because I have my account linked, I can actually select it and import it directly from Studio, which I will do now using the import flow. And I also want to make it active. So after selecting it, what we can see is the code is being imported and all of the libraries are also imported. So we have the Mbed libraries panel that shows the, all of the libraries that we see in the program. And what you can notice is, for this example, I picked the Mbed OS 5, and because before I showed you the Mbed OS 6, so this time I'll show you that it also works for Mbed OS version 5. And the code, very simple. I just coded it today that just prints some messages on the serial monitor. And now I will show you the web USB functionality. So that's what Rob mentioned. I have a few boards. Let's pick the K64F first. I can connect this board into using USB cable into my system. And after that, what you can see is my board is automatically picked up by Studio, and the serial monitor is enabled on the board. That happens because I already had my board linked. To link the board, you need to press the USB button here, and it allows you to select the targets that you want to use, that you currently have connected. So I already selected the DAPLink one, which is the K64F board. And after that, what you can see, there is not only the build option, but also the deploy. So let's talk about build first. After doing the build, what happens is it works exactly the same way as you are used to probably in online compiler. It allows you to compile the code, and after the compilation is successful, it actually downloads the binary so you can drag and drop it directly on your system. As you can see, the compilation for it was very quick, and we are having a separate build system, online build system, that supports different tool chains that we use. At the moment, we do not allow to select the tool chain per program, but that's something that we are considering adding in the future. So if it's something that you're interested in, please let us know in your feedback. We definitely consider adding it. And after the build, I can also select the deploy. So what happens now is it's doing the quick build operation, and after that, it's flashing the program directly on the board. And when it happens, it's actually now running the program, so you can see it's actually printing the message on the panel at the bottom using the serial, and it's also blinking the LED. I can change something here so you can see that it actually refreshes. So let me change it to 2 seconds of the blinking, and let's just do the blinking instead of blinking LED. And once again, let's build it and then flash it on the board. So what we can see, it's now printing every 500 milliseconds. As soon as it builds and flash, it will actually blink every 2 seconds. And also the serial monitor message will be changed.
So there's a question on the chat about the building running locally or on a cloud instance. So maybe you want to explain a little bit about how the build system works.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just answer it as soon as it builds. So now it builds, it runs. We can see it in the top, bottom right corner. And now we can see actually it refreshed. Now it's just saying blinking every 2 seconds. And we can see the LED blinking every 2 seconds instead of half a second. Could you repeat, Joe, the question?
So the question was, does the build run locally or does it get generated on the cloud, if I'm understanding it right?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So it is not running locally. So we have the online build system that Keil Studio Cloud is calling to start the build. It's providing the progress back, and at the end of the compilation, it provides the binary back to Studio. So it works differently than on Mbed Studio, because on Mbed Studio, it's running fully on your system, which means that you need to have all of the tools installed on your system. And in Keil Studio Cloud, you do not need to do this.
There's another question just while we've got you interrupted, Eric, about whether we support Git submodules.
At the moment, not. We do not, but it's something that we also want to add soon. It's actually on our backlog of the things that we want to add.
Thanks, Eric. Was there anything else you wanted to demo?
Yes, so there is like few more things very quickly. So one of the important difference also between the online compiler and Studio is we support settings. So first of all, you can very easily change the theme between the light or dark. So it's also like fully supported. I will stick to the dark one because that's the one I prefer. But also one of the other differences is we also have the preferences. So we can change a lot of functionality available in Studio here. So for example, how the IntelliSense works, how we are doing the deploy, all of this is fully customizable. On top of that, we also have the shortcuts, so we can easily modify all of the shortcuts that you want to use. So you can have nice view of those, and you can also override them.
One of the preferences you just scrolled past there is actually quite relevant for Mbed boards as well. So they're using DAPLink for running applications.
Yes, that's correct. So this is the feature that, Rob, would you like to provide a little bit more information about?
Yeah, sure. So we have the ability to deploy to different targets, and as you can understand, different pieces of hardware and different protocols and different sort of firmware requires different ways of talking through from the IDE. So what this checkbox allows us to do is allows us to take advantage of a known sort of piece of hardware where we can flash very quickly to like that bits of hardware running the DAPLink firmware, basically. Without this turned on, it actually uses a debug connection to undertake it, which is slightly slower, but in many cases also allows you to verify the flashed image as well. So it's just different channels effectively to get the different to get your application flashed to your hardware.
And there's actually a related question to this, which is, are there any debugging capabilities?
That is a very good question. Yes, there are for a limited number of boards. Rob, would you mind showing us very quickly debug feature?
If you finished your demos, Eric, I can take over and show a little bit of debugging.
Yeah, go for it.
Absolutely. Okay, great. So I think it's I think there's a bit of a caveat around this. So as we've pointed out, this is in a beta state. This product, and at the moment we're trying to support all of the existing sort of build support for that you get with the online compiler, and our focus at the moment has been on debugging just quite a small amount of bits of hardware. As you can imagine, bringing up a debug stack in a browser environment is not trivial, but our long-term intent is to enable as much hardware as possible. So in future, expect this supported hardware to expand exponentially.
Just while you're loading that up, there's a couple of questions I can take around whether it's a free to use product or not.
Yeah, what's the model?
Well, the intent is that this is free to use. So Keil Studio Cloud is free to access, basically in a similar way to the online compiler or to Mbed Studio. That's our plan at the moment, and obviously there might be some desktop tooling which eventually replaces what we're doing with Mbed Studio today under the Keil Studio product name, and that will be professional tooling. But again, the intent there is to have a free to use option. So Rob, over to you.
Sure. Okay. So again, starting at keil.arm.com, I can launch Keil Studio, and I logged into this just a couple of minutes ago, so it skipped straight over the login page, and hopefully it will load quite quickly because I've just been using this. So starting with a completely empty workspace, I'm going to import a project which we've been using actually for developing the debug capabilities in this, and this is actually based on the SimSys ecosystem. So this is a specific thing we're using for debugging. So I'll import this project, which shouldn't take too long. So now we've got this selected. It's written specifically for a piece of hardware I've got here, which is a K32 board. And as Eric has shown you already, I can plug this guy in, and it should be automatically detected. So if you watch over here, the target drop down should change. And if it doesn't, if it has not recognized this, yes, it has. There we go. So it knows this board is now plugged in, and these different buttons become available. So what I'm going to do, I think, is literally just after this import, is, fingers crossed, just go ahead and hit the debug button. So what it's going to do is go and use our new build system to build SimSys ecosystem-based projects. It's going to flash it. It's run it far too fast for me to talk over it. It's flashed it to my board, and it's also started a debug session. So this is by default done a run to main straight into the project. We have sort of run control up here where we can do various different things. We've got an overview of our threads and our call stack as to where we are in the project, and I think this is quite an interesting area. We've got lots of sort of details about what's going on in the memory, so looking at local variables, global variables, and also registers. So we've gone into this project. It's got just a lot of basically fake data in here, so you can just see these variables working. But if you can see here, we've got some global variables already set, which were statically declared at the top of this file. And then as we go over these lines, which I'm going to do now, step over these, we should see these local variables starting to come into scope. So as we click through these, as each one is getting declared, we'll see it appear. And coming down here, we'll see these different variables appearing. And at the same time, the registers are changing on the device as well. So this is the sort of speed we expect our debugging to run at, which is quite usable. Other things we've got in here, there's a DSB function here. Let's go over that. I think these are all just normal functions in here. And as you go through, we can hover over these variables and see their values as well. We can very quickly restart the program just by clicking this, and as you can see, this is almost instantaneous. It's restarted the application on my board, and we can stop it and come out of debug. Clicking debug again, it already knows that the program's up to date and it's already been flashed, so it should just start the session pretty much straight away, and it runs straight into it. This is quite a sort of ad hoc demo here. Don, Andy, Joe, is there any sort of things that you would like me to delve into in these different areas? Yeah,
maybe if you could, I guess, how does that work? I guess you have like a debug server running somewhere.
Yeah, so everything you see here, although we use a remote build system, everything running here is completely local, running inside your browser. So at the point where you run a debug session, it actually downloads a debug package. So the debug stack is running inside your browser and then connecting out via your web USB to your hardware. So this means that from our point of view, there's not a lot of load on our servers, but also the latency is really reduced because everything's just done here within this environment, basically, within the browser. Technically, it uses a lot of different technologies. There's lots of WebAssembly modules in here and cross-compilation from C-based code, and it uses the native debug adapters, which are available in Visual Studio Code and Eclipse Thea, which this product's based on.
Awesome. I think maybe can you set a breakpoint?
Yeah, okay. Let's do that.
Very
So,
random question.
Yeah, you're right.
I was going to ask that, Tom. Good question.
So if you stick a breakpoint here, the breakpoint control comes up here, and then I can click run, it will run straight through to this point. Or we can stick it inside this loop, for example. So it runs here, and clicking run again will just keep going around inside this loop.
Could it also support JTAG, as one of the questions that Paolo's just asked?
So currently the debug stack supports SimSysDAP. We recommend SimSysDAP version 2 because we get sort of bulk endpoint support, which makes it a lot faster. JTAG is certainly something we are interested in enabling, and that's not something we currently have today. It's something we'd like to investigate in future.
Yeah, one of the other interesting things about this is that you could, for example, use a Ulink Plus, so you could use a debug probe with Keil Studio Cloud and debug another target from that. So it doesn't have to be the onboard debug interface on the development board itself.
That's a very good point. I don't actually have that to hand, but using a Ulink Plus probe, we then have the ability to set up custom targets. So this means that if you plug in a device, which is a Ulink Plus probe, for example, you can set it up so that it automatically sets it to be a certain target that's at the other end of it. So when we actually go ahead and undertake a deploy or a debug session, it will know how to do that via the probe.
So there's another question, which is there also a serial terminal available? So Eric showed this earlier in the serial Mbed demo. But I don't know if you want to talk about web serial, which is also mentioned here in the question.
Okay, so getting a bit technical now. So Eric can show that again, the serial outputs. So we have a bidirectional serial or UART support running over Web USB. So that is implemented in the latest version of DAPLink today, and is also in the newer SimSysDAP version 2.1 specification. And that's to get access still using the Web USB channel that we're using to talk to the device. Aside from that, as someone's already mentioned, web serial is also a technology which sits beside Web USB. And the intent is to add support for web serial as well. There isn't currently any ways to sort of tie the web serial COM port that you open to a specific device. So what it would allow you to do is just open any COM port locally from your machine and then show it in an interactive terminal, basically.
So is the use case like related to custom hardware? If you have like a target which you're using with a debug probe, and you want to plug in a USB serial converter and have that hooked up to Studio to
yes, web serial will give us the ability to open any COM port locally, and also in scenarios where DAPLink or SimSysDAP is not being used, it gives us the ability to open up any sort of other access over serial to other hardware, as you say, custom targets and different firmware, hardware running different firmware.
Quick question, Rob. So ST support ST-Link. Have you got any plans to support that?
We are currently in very close conversations with ST, and we have some things in the works there. Currently not supported today, but we hope to bring that on board very soon.
Excellent. And Eric, I see you were using a K64F. I joke with the team a lot that there'll be a K64F running Mbed somewhere long after humans have been wiped off the face of the planet. One of the other popular NXP boards is the LPC1768. Do we have plans to support that?
It's a very good question. Yes. So very recently, actually, Don and the rest of ARM team was looking very closely at supporting this board. It's using quite an old firmware.
Yeah.
Recently, there was a breakthrough, and we actually added the new Web USB functionality also to this firmware. It's not yet live, but I can actually show a quick demo of it. So let me show the screen.
So this is basically the original Mbed board, isn't it?
But this one.
Yeah.
Correct. So what you can see is I actually have the LPC1768 here with me, and when I disconnect it, you can see that it's not available. When I connect it, it's automatically picked up by Studio. And after this, the same as what I showed for K64F before, I can actually deploy the program directly on the board itself in exactly the same way. Once again, it's using the new firmware that on the board that hasn't been yet released, but we are looking very closely to release it as soon as possible. So hopefully you will be able to also use it. So once again, it's also doing the compilation and then deploy on the board itself. So that's how it works. And also you mentioned before there was a question about the serial. So that's something I showed before in a demo. So that's where the serial output appears. There was a question about it. And we are also planning to, at the moment, it's just reading the data, but in the future, we also want to support writing the data directly to the board from the same panel. So hopefully it will come soon.
And
I think sorry, Joe.
I was just going to pick up on Jan's question about debug support compared to Mbed Studio, for example. So the Mbed Studio debugger actually has quite sort of different DNA, so to speak, different stack to the Keil Studio Cloud debugger. The Keil Studio Cloud one is sharing some of the underlying components of ARM's other software development tools. So ARM-DS, which is used for bringing up connections to chips when they're back from the foundry, and also uses some of the technology from Keil Microvision. So it's got a bit more of a, I guess, like a low-level approach, and Rob could probably explain some of the differences in the stack, if that's interesting.
Yeah, sure. So on the desktop version of Mbed Studio, we actually use a product called PyOCD, which is an open source backend to GDB to talk to our services, and support for debugging in Mbed Studio on the desktop is often added either directly to PyOCD or via packs that PyOCD can load in that we actually distribute with Mbed Studio. With Keil Studio Cloud, however, as Joe alluded to, we're actually taking some of the professional components out of existing IDEs and effectively redeploying them in the cloud environment. The debugging support for this, both across Mbed and the SimSys ecosystems, is enabled by loading in SimSys packs for that hardware. So as long as SimSys packs are up to date and sort of delivered to us by partners, that should enable the debugging in the cloud environment. Obviously, being run from the cloud, when you do any sort of pack management or access, which we need for either debugging or if you're using different SimSys pack components in a SimSys aware product, we have access to the entire library of SimSys packs in that environment. So there's no need to work out what you need and download it. It's always there and available for you. And when we detect your target, which we do via web USB, we can determine the correct pack to load in to get all of the different sequences to use to undertake those debugging sessions.
And Robin, Joe, and Eric, we have a follow-up question. Is there like a list of boards you're planning on supporting, or how does that work? Like what?
So the planned approach that we're taking at the moment is really to look at the debug interface, different varieties, and support those, I guess, one by one, so to speak. So we'd be looking at ST-Link support, or we'd be looking at interfaces that implement SimSys DAP v2, and then potentially older versions of SimSys DAP as well. So the target support will really come from that rather than individual boards being enabled. But obviously, we still want to do a level of testing with those boards as we get the capability to support them and make sure that we can do all of the detection, the flashing, the debug, But again, as Rob has already mentioned, what we're doing is using the data that is available in the CMSIS packs to actually drive that. So as long as there's a CMSIS pack for the device, and once we've got the interface firmware supported, there's a lot more possibility to kind of broaden that support out.
I see there's a question around targets being supported in Keil Studio. It might be worth doing a quick overview of what that really means. So as you've seen today, we've got build support, deploy support, and debug support. And currently the sort of like supported bits of hardware get smaller as you go across those different features. So build support today is exactly the same as the existing online compiler. So any Mbed target supports Mbed OS 5.12 or newer will be supported in the online in Keil Studio for building, and then deploy is then a subset of that, looking at DAPLink hardware or DAPLink firmware, which is up to date, and then the debug is currently tested only on 3 targets today, but we want to. That's where we want to focus our efforts, is opening up that deploy and debug functionality to more hardware. Excellent.
Can I ask a question about the beta? So it's like an open beta. Are there specific things you'd like to figure out or get like feedback on from the wider community, and things that they should look out for and give you their feedback to influence the product?
That's a very good question. I probably can answer it. Let me share also once again very quickly the screen. So first of all, I would like to thank everyone for the feedback that we already get. We got a lot of feedback from users from Mbed Studio, but also from the closed beta version of Keil Studio. That being said, we also would like to hear from you from this open beta. And we enabled few ways of how you can actually provide us. One is using the forum. So that's what was mentioned before, either Mbed forum or Keil forum. We are monitoring it very often. So any issue you can report there, or any idea for the new functionality is definitely welcomed. Another way is built into the studio itself. So if you go here, you can provide the feedback either using forum or feedback form. After selecting it, there's a new control here where you can use to actually provide the feedback directly to us. It's state sensitive, and we can select how many stars. You can also select very easily the area. So for example, if you like the WebUSB, or if WebUSB functionality doesn't work for you, you can always select it and provide us more information about it. We are, like I said, we are actively checking it, and it will help us prioritize particular functionalities in Studio.
Yeah, I didn't think that feedback feature, but it's quite powerful to be able to point out where we're having problems with, or what's working really well. So it's really useful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Don't hesitate to provide us also a screenshot if you see that some particular feature does not work. We'll definitely look into it. And also, it's very important to stress that it's a beta product. So there are still a few problems in areas that we want to polish and improve. One of these areas is IntelliSense. It's still taking quite a lot of resources. We still need to do the optimization in that area. So you definitely probably see some problems potentially there. Another area is the boards that are supported. So that's what Rob and Joe mentioned already. We have different level of supports. Debug at the moment is supported by 3 targets, but we are adding the support for more boards.
I was just going to add as well, in terms of overall feedback, anything that doesn't feel quite right, or anything that maybe feels counterintuitive, we're always interested in hearing that, and we all monitor the feedback, so we'll take that on board, and it'll make its way into our backlog. So in particular, if you're used to using the online compiler, there are some concepts in Keil Studio Cloud that are a little bit more complex, I would say. So if you're struggling to get to grips with things, perhaps let us know, and there might be areas that we can tweak or provide better docs around or something like that.
Excellent. It's really good. I really like how you can give feedback so easily. That's really cool.
Cool. I think we're almost running out of time. So I think, guys, first, thanks a lot for coming along to the Tech Forum today and giving you that awesome overview about Keil Studio. And I hope that will get everyone excited about trying it out and try and send you that valuable feedback. So yeah, thanks again. And would you have any final thoughts you'd like to share or an ask for the community?
I'd say just give it a go. This is where we're going to be spending our development effort going forward, and always keen to hear feedback. It helps to prioritize our roadmap and what we're working on day to day.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks again, guys. Really awesome demos. And Andy, you have a short announcement.
Yeah, so we were right slightly later than planned this month, but we're taking a break for the summer because Don's away next month and I'm away the month after, so we'll be back in September with the next Mbed Tech Forum. So just wanted to make sure people were aware of that.
Awesome.
We've already got interesting stuff lined up for the September edition as well.
Keeping up the suspense, I like it. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Andy, for co-hosting, and thanks to the community. And hope you all have a nice summer. And
yeah, thanks for all the great questions as well. Really good questions. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
Cheers.
Thanks so much.
Bye.